So here we are once again looking for that elusive alibi in Idaho. Somehow, Brian Kohberger, with the help of his attorney, have had 300 days or so to come up with an alibi when you're only supposed to have 10 days. And somehow, she got more time. She got till April 17th or something, because she hasn't seen the cast report and she hasn't seen the drive test reports and she hasn't gone through all the video yet. If you have an alibi, you have an alibi. It means you're being truthful. We already know that she said, oh, he just likes to go on drives late at night. That's as much as they're going to give of the alibi at this point. He knows what he did that night. I mean, he might not know down to the second where he was, but if he had to get gas somewhere, if he stopped anywhere, route that he took was what his destination was. So for them to push back and be like, we haven't received the cast report or the drive test, so we can't give you the alibi. Number one, that tells me that whatever the alibi is, Ann Taylor thinks it's weak, so she doesn't want to give it up. She's accusing the prosecution of trying to peek inside their defense before it's time. But it's Idaho law that you have 10 days to come up with an alibi defense if you're going to use it at a trial. Her saying oh, the prosecution's trying to peek inside our case. Girl, you're literally trying to peek inside the prosecution's case before you come up with an alibi. And the law is written a very specific way, because an alibi, it's just, this is where I was at the time, right? That's it. And if you're honest and truthful, whether there's witnesses or not, your alibi is your alibi. So you can't manufacture something to fit the circumstances, right? You have 10 days to come up with an alibi defense. And you've now had, 300 days, or you can have 330 days or something by the time the date, April 17th or whatever, rolls around. The families came out with a statement after this court hearing saying, we know everyone's trying to make everything perfect, but there's no way that you can do everything perfect. So, they just want justice. They just want to bring us to trial sooner rather than later so that they can move forward with their lives. If you are waiting to have certainty with anything in life, you will never ever start doing anything. And that's the whole reason why people never start anything new. They're waiting to be perfect. Posting videos on the internet, for instance, a lot of people want to be perfect at it before they start doing it. So they're thinking in their heads all the way to perfect it and how they're going to do it, and they never start. And that's the point, is that you have to start, because you're never going to have 100% of the evidence. There is no perfection in life. So come with what you got. He's probably going to appeal it anyway, and let's do this. And I'm in agreement. Yeah, there's a lot of discovery, but there's a lot of bogus tips in there, I'm sure. I mean, I know that everyone in the country was calling in nonsense from the internet. So yeah, they have to sift through that, and client is innocent. He will know where to look for that exculpatory evidence, right? If he's guilty, you have to look at everything. Say, for instance, Brian Kohberger is innocent. He likes to go on drives late at night all the time, so his days are mixed up. He doesn't know what he did at what day, right? On top of that, he has visual snow, so he can't really see anything, so he's just driving around blind, trying not to kill himself, and that's his favorite hobby. Furthermore, he has visual snow, so even if he was inside the house, he wouldn't have been able to see jack shit. So he wouldn't have been able to do the killings, right? I mean, I feel like this visual snow stuff is going to come up in the trial. I mean, is that why he left the sheath behind? Is it something that's triggered by emotion? And I don't even think a doctor can say, for Brian Kohberger, visual snow happens, it's just constant, right? Or it's triggered by certain events. It's triggered by high stress events. I think that only Brian Kohberger would know those answers. So they can tailor that and find experts to say whatever they want about that. Prosecution can do the same. So, I mean, I feel like that's going to be a point of contention, probably. So Ann Taylor, what she's wanting to do, she wants to see the cast reports. She wants to see everything it's all tower data, but it's all interpreted data. And I think that's Ann Taylor's point, is that they can tailor that to whatever his alibi may be. But they want them to put the cast report out first, so that if they're like, oh, we saw him here, here, and here, this is his timeline, and, he knows he was on some camera on the other side of town, or he bought something at a convenience store, whatever. I want to be able to say that to discredit the analysis of the cast report. So that's what they're fighting over right now. Ann Taylor thinks that they are going to tailor their analysis to fit around the alibi. The prosecution thinks that he is going to use that data to determine what his alibi should be. I think they're both right, but the law says that you need to tell your alibi 10 days. It's not like you have to give up your whole defense, but if you have an alibi, you have to provide it within 10 days if you're going to use it at a trial. And he's had 300 and something days. It doesn't say that you have to have all of the discovery and all of the evidence before you provide your alibi. Your alibi is just saying, I was here at this time, so I couldn't have done it. And a lot of people online are saying, well, the state has to get their story straight. They keep changing their story. The state does not have to have their story straight, because the state's story, it's not a first-hand account. It's a narrative based on the evidence that can change. It doesn't have to match what they said during the probable cause. It can be, new evidence could have come out to pinpoint locations and times that are different. It's not like a he said, she said. The state's story is based on evidence that is collected and analyzed. His story, he should know where the fuck he was. If he was driving around all night, every night, all the time, so like his days are mixed together, he knew where he was that night, because that was big news in that area about the murder. So like whatever he was doing, if he was innocent, or if he was guilty, he knows where he was. But if he was innocent, he definitely thought about exactly where he was. Because you would have thought about like, oh, maybe that car that I passed by, or that person, or the car, I was driving by in that area, I saw that car speeding away. Whatever. Those thoughts would have been front and center for an innocent person that was driving around that night. An innocent person whose car ended up being very similar to the car that they put a bolo out on, has absolutely had 300 days to think long and hard about every single moment of that night. I know that the people that are pro Brian Kohberger are going to be like, they're framing him, they're just trying to get his alibi to frame him. This is a law. You have 10 days to provide your alibi. This is nothing to do with discovery. Discovery is, a process over time as analysis comes through. And the alibi thing is 10 days. It's not your whole defense. You're just saying, this is where I was. It couldn't have been me because I was here with this person. Period. If you're being truthful, it's not that hard. The whole cyber sleuth show and WSU Kim, was that really WSU Kim? Because I could have sworn that I'd seen her before, and she was blonde and younger and like kind of a crackhead. Not this older woman like that. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just how I pictured her, because she was kind of like a spaz, and that woman was like calm and like, it just did not seem like the same person. Now, that being said, I have never really bought into anything that WSU Kim has said, only because there's no way all those kids would have been kept quiet. There would have been so many people coming out corroborating what she was saying. She has like this third-hand hearsay, and all the kids are just not talking about it, and none of the kids have opened their mouths. Come on, that's not real. I felt like the Cyber Sleuth show was kind of, pointing to certain creators and being like, look, you perpetuate conspiracies. You don't vet your source. You are causing problems. You're not helping at all. I think that was the overall message. However, then they gave WSU Kim a platform, and, that might have been the first time that a lot of people heard about that, people that weren't following the case closely. So why would you do that? And then the whole dot thing, I never believed that person either. I don't even think I repeated anything that person ever said, because it was just so far out there. I knew a lot of people were talking about it at the time, but once Dot was exposed, I was not surprised. But the way that they exposed Dot was more like, this was clearly a lie and you were wrong. But the way they presented WSU Kim, I mean, they were kind of presenting her as if she was being truthful. Brian Kohberger's cuts on his hands. I never thought I saw cuts on his hands. And this was like, what, a month later? Why would he have cuts on his hands, visible cuts on his hands a month later? As they kind of pointed fingers at creators saying, you're perpetuating conspiracy theories. They themselves were perpetuating conspiracy theories. And Dave, I mean, they should have poked holes in what he was saying. I don't think anyone believed Dave after the first few days. Like, a lot of people gave him a platform to talk. And then that whole Snapchat BS, like, oh, my Snapchats got deleted. They're looking at UTC time. They weren't even looking at Idaho time. So for him to be, that means the FBI came in and deleted all my snaps for that day. And then Coffin Daffer gets on and says the FBI absolutely can do that, which maybe that's true. But is that really what happened? Like, he wouldn't be the only one saying this if that's what happens. I don't know. I just didn't think it was very fair how they, targeted Dot. They targeted JLR for things that he said in the past that were incorrect. But they just let things slide with WSU Kim, where no one really questioned her or vetted her or anything. And Dave, where he should have been questioned and they should have brought out other people. Let's look at your Snapchat. Let's see if your Snapchats were deleted. Let's convert UTC to Idaho time and see what time that says you were active on Snapchat. I mean, it's called cyber sleuth, and they didn't even cyber sleuth those goddamn people that they put on the show. Come on. That being said, I don't think Brian Kohberger has a legitimate alibi. The defense is hoping that they get the timeline wrong so that they can say, look, your analyst isn't credible. This is wrong. Like, his car was over here or his car was over there. Whatever. Or someone saw him on the other side of town and his car couldn't have been there at that time. The defense is just looking to discredit the analysis based on minutia. That tells me that the defense probably does not have an innocent client. And I second what the families are saying. Like, let's just see what you got. Let's go to trial. Let's do this. Let's hear it. Let's grieve. Let's move on. He's probably going to appeal no matter what. They always do. So let's just do it. I mean, Ann Taylor's so concerned about her image and all of this, but it's like, if you have a quadruple unaliver as your client and they are guilty, do you really want to get them off on a technicality? Do you really want that to be your legacy? You want to retire and write a book about it? Like, maybe she does, but I feel like she's going to be able to write the book either way. But yeah, I guess people are going to read her book more. It's just like, how I got Brian Kohberger off. We'll have to see what they come up with, and I think the prosecution should hold out on giving them the cast and the drive test report until they give the alibi, because the alibi was due a year ago, buddy. So the drive tests are basically validating how accurate the tower information is. So they have these tools, they drive around, they test the signal so they can get more accurate location data. So that's why it's taking so long, is they're trying to map out exactly based on the cell phone data. His cell phone was off at the time. So, I mean, I guess that's just his route after the murders and before. But that's where we are with the Idaho 4. We'll see what's in the next chapter. But at this point, with this whole alibi thing and the cast report, not looking too good for Brian Kohberger.